Welcome again, everybody. I am just waiting for the YouTube to show the chat. They're doing that weird thing again. There it is. And let's see, pop out the chat. And I know last week we didn't have time for like half the questions. So if you didn't get your question answered last week, feel free to ask it again today. We do have a special presentation today from Charles. He's going to tell us about what's been going on with GoogleBot and from the perspective of his large scale enterprise. So this is going to be pretty interesting in my opinion, because I've been researching Googlebot. I've been trying to learn about its configuration and its different modes and what engineering pieces are enabled within Googlebot because I want to have a better understanding of what it's like to see through Googlebot's eyes. And so Charles has got a unique perspective. He has these absolutely massive properties that get a lot of attention and love from Googlebot. So he's seeing how Googlebot explores. And so, both of these attempts, they're very different attempts, but they all lead to the same thing, understanding how Googlebot sees websites. And so that's why it's good to like keep an eye on what Googlebot's doing and how it seems to be evolving. But before we jump into it, I want to mention our sponsor, Magic PR. He has a discount code, SEO Fight Club, that can save you 10% on your press release needs. So, Madge, what's going on in the press release world? Anything to announce?
Nothing exciting. Extremely busy, which is a good thing. Um, we are playing with AI at the moment. I'm trying to build a tool for the back end. Nothing, not to write the PR, so please don't think that. This is more to do with making out or streamlining the back end a lot more. So wherever AI can help, especially with ChatGPT 4.0 or Orion. It looks exciting, and yeah, we're trying to implement that as we speak. So apart from that, nothing else, to be honest with you. But the discount code, yeah, it can be used on any package within Magic PR. So bronze, silver, or gold, they can take advantage.
Well, it's really good that you're keeping up with the technology. I know we're all kind of dabbling, and so probably the main thing is to be able to change with the times.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I recommend that everybody should dabble with the AI tools out there because you don't want to be caught off guard and you don't want to have to invest huge amounts of time to catch up on the state of things. So I think it's great that you're being progressive because I know not all companies do that.
Yeah, I try to improve wherever we can, and any feedback that our clients give us, I'd love to take that on board and see what we can change. But from a publication point of view, everything's still strong. We still have, well, sorry, one little update. Our gold package now has the ability of laser focusing to a local region. So if you're from a particular city within America, we can target that city rather than just target the entire US market. So if you want us to laser focus a PR campaign, we can do that. That's only for the gold package, not for bronze or silver.
Excellent. So yeah, if you need a press release, be sure to let Madge know. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing the promo slide here, and I'm gonna let Charles share because he's gonna be running the show today. So Charles, I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me just share screen. And are you folks seeing, I'm always unsure what people can see and can't see.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the little window of all the people on the right-hand side of my screen or not?
No. Just
Okay.
the slides.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't obscuring anything. Okay, so I actually have two parts to today's presentation. First, I want to open up with a bot watch. And I'm thinking that this is something we could probably do maybe monthly or so, depending on how active the bots are. And I kind of want to give everybody an update because not only have I seen a lot of different bots over the last 30 days, but I've seen a lot of different changes occur. So from for most of April, we were sitting, and I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, or I should say I didn't know the exact date as I was putting a slide together. We were sitting at a very specific bot was hitting us. Now, the first thing I want to point out when you're thinking about the bots, when the Google bot, the important thing to keep an eye on is that Chrome build number. That's the number you want to watch. So Google's come out several times and said that the Google bots, it's just stupid. It doesn't do any calculating. So that means when they change the algorithm, they need to change the Chrome build on the bot because the bot needs to look in other places, needs to pull other bits of data. So it doesn't do any calculating. So that means when one changes, the other's probably changing. So at the end of the big core update on April 30th, it was sitting at the specific number, 122. You'll also notice that it's really the first and last numbers are the ones I always keep an eye on. Those middle numbers don't seem to change a whole heck of a lot. And honestly, I'm not 100% sure what they mean.
Well, I want
Yeah.
to point out something you said there, which
Mhm.
is quite remarkable. It's a very subtle distinction. But what you just explained to people is that you can detect a Google update by looking at the Googlebot version number changes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that is awesome. Like we often talk when we talk about Google updates about Google's DevOps, like all the historic methods for detecting a core update before it actually kicks in. They've all been tricks where Google tips their hand in their DevOps procedures. And so this is one where they literally spell it out in a published version number, which, why didn't we think of this sooner?
It's every time something big happens on our site, or even every time I see a trend on our sites, I always immediately go into my log file, see, is this Google or is this us? If it lines up, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. If it lines up nicely with the Google bot, then it's more likely it's a Google bot, a Google change as opposed to something we broke or fixed. With that said, I always give everybody a caveat. There was one day we had a mountain of 404 suddenly started showing up in our log files. And I said, uh-oh, what changed? And we looked and we saw Google released an update pretty much within an hour of all those 404s showing up. Like, huh, what's Google crawling now? What's it doing now? Driving ourselves crazy. And we realized, nope, we just happened to launch a bad XML file on the same, not only the same day, but pretty much the same time that Google launched an update. So it goes back to the old, correlation is not always causation. Gives you something to research, but it's not always the same thing. But sometimes you can, be a little too clever for your own good.
Yeah, and it's very true that the fundamentals of SEO that are baked into the algorithm, those fundamentals don't change very often. And in fact, many of those fundamentals have never changed since day one of Google. And so yeah, oftentimes if your rankings tanked on a day, it's usually something you did or something somebody did to you. And then, the kind of the lesser likelihood is that an algorithm specifically got you. It's not unheard of, but it's not as common as people claim it is. Usually when you go and investigate, you're like, get rid of these no index tags on your page. That's a lot more common than Google found you and punished you. That's not a very common occurrence. And what we find is that often rule breaking goes unpunished because most of it is manual actions over at Google, and there are 200 trillion pages, which basically means it's not being enforced. They might make an example of someone from time to time, but statistically, that's a joke. But
So
yeah,
I was going to say, Charles, on this one, you're showing, in a period of about, little over 2 weeks, you had, four different Google bots. Was it this nice linear progression, or was there other activity?
So that's a good question. So there are always all kinds of Google bots floating around. So these are what I would call the major bots that are out there. There are some minor ones floating around. And just because, let's just take that 122.94, the first one, just because that kind of hands off to 124, 118, that does not mean 122.94 goes away. It's still floating around out there. And sometimes it floats around for weeks. For example, a great example was um, the current one we have, 125.65. That's only processing our HTML pages. 124, 155 is processing all of our JavaScript right now. And that's not unusual to see when the new bot takes over, the old bot's still doing the JavaScript files, and the new bot's only doing HTML. It is a pretty clean handoff. I can usually tell you the time it started hitting our sites. It's usually in the late afternoon Eastern time, probably just before lunch West Coast time. So everybody wants to push it out and then go to lunch. That's another thing. So Ted, you were talking earlier about understanding how the Googlebot works. I look at this sometimes and I watch the patterns, and it gives me a better understanding of how Google works as a corporation. Like you'll notice that we have these updates, and this isn't a typo. This wasn't a copy paste error. They all start on Thursdays. Google likes to release things on Thursdays. There was a brief period of time last summer where they were releasing things on Fridays, which was insane in my mind. Hopefully they did that a couple times and said, let's start doing it on Thursdays from now on. The other interesting thing I found is that when you watch, so if you're into watching your Google traffic channels, so a lot of people think, oh, I'm getting traffic from Google. And what does that mean? So is it, you mean Google.com? Is it desktop? Is it mobile? But don't forget, there's Discover, there's news.google.com, there's image search, there's all these other types of search that's taking place out there. The tabs, if you go to Google right now, you might see a news, image, video. Those are a subset of Google search. So there's Google general search with different subsets. There's Google News, there's Google Discover, and we've seen fluctuations depending upon what's happening with these bots. For example, between the 2nd and the 9th, they were obviously dialing something up or down on Discover. We saw a change in our traffic from the 1st to the 9th. And then almost like clockwork, and that's why I went and checked my bots the other day, is our traffic started dropping. And I'm like, wait, what happened? And I looked and I saw almost exactly to that hour, because I can track our traffic to the hour. The new bot took over and we started pulling back a little bit in traffic. Nothing huge, but enough for me to notice. This morning, I was doing a little research. I noticed, oh, wait a minute. Looks like our traffic started increasing on Friday. I went back and looked at our hourly numbers and was able to line it up almost exactly with this update that happened last May 16th, last week on Thursday. So it's really kind of cool to see that not only is Google changing things in the algorithm, but you can watch what it's changing. I can get a pretty good idea of what's been, what they've been, fussing with on the recent updates by watching the different traffic channels. And that's something I think a lot of us are blind to. We just think Google. But it's a lot more nuanced than that. There's Google, there's news, there's news tab within Google, which is different from Google News. So keeping an eye on all those numbers and watching how they change gives you a better understanding of what Google's working on and what Google's not working on.
That's really fascinating. When you mentioned that you were overlaying the graphs there, that's something I typically do for negative SEO attacks. So you're kind of taking the diagnostic standard for enterprise, negative SEO auditing and applying it to Googlebot, treating Googlebot as if it's an assault on the server. So you line up the graph of the attack vectors, by time, and then you overlay your traffic and see if the attack vectors align with the traffic changes.
Yep.
And it gives me chills, but yeah, you're treating it like it's a negative SEO attack.
Yeah, my standard operating procedure for whenever we see more than a 5% gain or loss in any day is I immediately look at what time of the year is it, what day of the week, what was the weather like? Summer times in the summertime, sorry, weekends in the summertime are slow news cycles. Nobody wants to read the news and get worked up at the news over the summertime. Everybody wants to go out and have a life. Um, so that I don't worry about when I see those drops. When I see a drop on a Tuesday and actually Thursdays, Fridays are when I'm always looking for it. I immediately say, all right, well, what drop was it due to? Was there one good story or one bad story? Maybe it was just something we did, but I'm always trying to figure out is when our numbers change, is it the news cycle? Is it something we did, good or bad? Is it something Google did? And again, my switch is usually that anything greater than that 5%. Anything less, I'll say that's just noise. Um, Unless it's a consistent 5% up every single day, 5 days in a row, then like that stops being noise, it starts being a trend. Um,
Mhm. I think one of the other interesting things is sometimes you'll see in the SEO groups, reports of some weirdness, some brokenness in the SERP, a certain set of sites or, getting really weird boosts or really weird drops. And then you'll see within a few days, Google will roll back to one or two versions of their bot, will become the prominent one again. So you can see sometimes that, oh, that Google bot had an error in it. It created some problems in the SERPs. They're rolling back. They'll fix the code. They'll figure out what it is and reprocess everything. And so you'll see a lot of fluctuations in the SERPs as it rolls back. I mean,
That's
yeah,
another great DevOps observation there. That's a way to detect an actual rollback based on version numbering. I
and
like.
I've seen a few of those. I've seen actual rollbacks. What I always find funny though, Lee, is when I read the articles on the search engine roundtable where people say, "Oh, there's all this volatility happening this week." I'll check the bots. Same bot that's been hitting us for the past 2 weeks. So I don't know what volatility they're talking about, but it's not a Google update. And
right.
that's something I would recommend everybody do. Everyone can get log files. Everyone can, there's no affiliation. I know Screaming Frog has a log file. I'm sure there's lots of others out there. You can download them via FTP off your server, import them in, and you can just see what's going on. And it's amazing what you learn by watching the log files, watching what Google hits, watching what Google doesn't hit. I've learned some very interesting things about Google. One of the things I've learned, not to go too off subject here, but one of the things I've learned is that robots.txt, you should always have robots.txt on your site, even if you're going to allow everything. Why? Google hits it every single day. I don't care how small my site is. I've got these stupid little test sites that Google will visit some of my test pages once every 2 weeks. It still hits my robots.txt every single day.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had, this was, I don't know, a while back, at least 2 years, possibly three. We were noticing that Google was constantly coming and looking for your privacy policy. And on a lot of the test sites we didn't have a privacy policy because, no human's ever going to visit it. They're just, these are just for, Google and Bing and things like that to look at. And so Ted started putting up a blank privacy policy on his test sites, and indexation improved. So, so it's almost like it's a checkbox sometimes. And I recently noticed, well, recently being last spring, that some of the Google bots started looking for, files like the ads.txt. And I'm like, I'm not running ads. I'm not doing any AdSense or anything like that. But I thought, well, if they're looking for it, so now on our sites, we have a blank ads.txt file as a default for everything. So we don't have any 404s. They're looking for it, we give it to them.
Google must like you better than they like me because they never look for my ads.txt. I've been watching for that. That's another file I've been watching for. They don't care. I guess they figured, yeah, this guy's not selling anything to anybody.
Well, yeah, it's simple because some of those some of the test sites we have are just pure random alpha, and they're looking for, so it's not like we're selling something. It's not
Yeah.
even English. But then there's other sites where you'll have a test site on something where you're you're writing about how to grow garlic or something like that, and they're like, hey, are you running ads? I'm like, no, I'm not running ads. I'm writing a blog. I'm testing some stuff. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick bot watch. I thought this is something we could do maybe monthly, every 6 weeks or so, and just see what's happened. If anything really interesting happens, obviously we can do a little more often. Um, but yeah, I was impressed when I checked this morning. I saw, oh, they moved from 124 to 125. I'm not sure I've ever seen the major build go from one, so it's gone from 122 to 125. I'm not sure I've ever seen it move that many numbers in such a short amount of time. It's really only been about 30 days, less actually. Um,
Well, those might not be like actual deployments. That could be source code repository. They committed a bug, they caught it, they committed a fix, they found another, committed a fix, and the version on their build system just ticked.
I'd love to understand more what these numbers mean. If there's any way, I remember a couple months ago we were discussing this, and I think somebody looked at the Chrome. I'll have to look for it, and I don't remember, but the numbers do mean something. You're right, Ted. And if we could get a little better insight to what those numbers meant, the one thing I will say is that, like I said, that last number is what normally changes. And the front number, the first number changes a lot less frequently. When they started talking about core updates, I know the first number is going to update, maybe even by two. I was a little surprised when I saw it jump from 124 to 125 and no talk of any updates or core updates or anything coming out of Google.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's a couple important pieces of information. So one would be, what's the specific version of Chrome that Googlebot is using? So they would want to maintain that because there are 0-day bug fixes. They'd need to know which Googlebots are potentially vulnerable to technical issues. So which version of Chrome was forked and used for Googlebot would be one piece. The other information is that the Googlebot feature set is in addition to what's publicly available in the open source Chrome. So they would have to fold in critical changes. And so some of those critical changes that are in there deal with the standard viewport size, disabling the web service fetch calls, accelerating time on the server. So they're overloading the JavaScript time functions so that they operate faster. Chrome appears to have latency in its ability to count, so it'll iterate somewhat slowly. It looks like they take away that latency for Googlebot, so it's far more performant, potentially to the point where it feels like alien technology when you compare benchmarks on counting. So they have the public open source Chrome, and then they apply their proprietary changes, and that becomes a Google bot. So I'm guessing these numbers have to deal with that, and then maybe a build number so they know which, specific build deployments.
Yeah, that last number I suspect is probably the build number because that's the one that changes regularly. Um, so anyways, so that's a bot watch. Um, oops, just click back. Now I figured we have a little fun with SEO field data, auditing errors in and with Google Search Console. So we had a legitimate AMP error the other day. And someone just made a mistake. We deployed something by accident, and then that, caused an error with Google, and Google, gave us the, hey, this page is invalid. So I took this information, my coders, they fixed it almost immediately. When we went into Google Search Console, we saw the error, and this is what really caught my eyes. Whenever I see spikes, I'm like, okay, something big happened. So once I dug into it, actually, these are a little out of order. I saw the report first, and then I dug into it and checked what the error was. So Google was able to tell us exactly what the error, which is awesome. Like that's so helpful. The problem was it was fixed, but we had a second error. The person who fixed it made a mistake when they fixed it, and it was a rush to get it out, so no one validated the AMP again. Always validate your stuff, folks, before you push it on production. Always do your validations. But regardless, it was pushed out. There was still another error, though. When I checked the page after it was pushed out, it found another error, the disallowed tag. The interesting thing was we tried to validate using Google Search Console, and the validation failed. And you can see here that the validation failed, but it still gave us the same error. Even though when we checked the page, Google Inspect knew that it was a different problem. The reporting did not understand it was a different problem. So what I suspect the validation does is the validation isn't checking if the error is gone. The validation must be checking if the page is valid, period, because it wasn't telling us that there was a new error. We actually had to wait several days. It was a good 3 or 4 days at least, and we'd actually already fixed the problem before Google updated Google Search Console and started showing us the new error that it was getting. So I think some of the interesting takeaways is Search Console is a great source of data, but don't confuse data with information. We're definitely in the BYOB range. Bring your own brain. It's just data. It's not information. The data is not live data. The reports that you see in Search Console are several days old. Actually, it even kind of tattles on itself a little bit. If you look at the upper right-hand side of your Search Console, it'll usually tell you the date, but it's at least a couple days old. And often errors in Search Console are symptoms of other problems. A great example I always have of this, and they don't have this in Search Console anymore, but they used to have in Search Console, what was it, long and short title tags or missing title tags. They had a couple things with title tags and meta descriptions. And I found, and Ted, you probably ran into this with e-commerce as well. I found when I was in e-commerce, when I found very long or very short title tags, the problem wasn't the title tag. The problem was something was brought in improperly into the catalog, and then it just messed everything up. But that's a good takeaway. Is often the errors I see in Search Console isn't the actual error; it's the symptom of a greater error or something else that's happening.
Yeah, my experience has been similar, but I kind of characterize it as Search Console is good at telling you there is a problem, but bad at telling you what the problem is. And so I tend to find that when Search Console is complaining, there is a legitimate problem, but you can't trust Search Console at all to have the right information about what's wrong. I mean, they sometimes get it right, but there have been times where, Search Console will complain that my font is too small or clickable elements are too close together. And the ultimate problem that fixes it is not even related to those things. So yeah, I do find that there's a disconnect with Search Console on the specifics.
And it's not dynamic enough. If you're in a dynamic environment where, whether it's your own site or whether it's a large organization where things are constantly getting updated and changed, the reports, they're not worthless, but they're just, you got to take it all with a grain of salt. Again, this was a great example where in this presentation where the report kept telling us the same error was occurring, even though I knew the same error wasn't occurring anymore. It was a new error, but the report just needs time to catch up and understand what's really going on. It knew it wasn't valid. It knew the page wasn't valid, and that was correct. That was good, but it didn't understand that the page had a different problem to it.
I think related to this, a lot of people don't understand that Search Console, the different tabs and stuff are fed by different systems. Because one error that I have replicated multiple times is I'll be putting up a new WordPress site and I'll get it just the way that I want, and then I'll go connect it to Search Console and I'll go, shit, I forgot to uncheck the dissuade search engine. So it says, oh, we can't crawl your thing, and then we'll go request crawl, and it'll go and crawl everything, and it's fine. It'll start ranking. And then you'll start to see for certain pages, it'll sit there and say, yeah, your page cannot appear on Google because, we're being blocked by no index tag. And I'm like, you are not being blocked. And if you go check the live URL, you'll see that not only are you eligible, but you may actually be there. So if you go look at the actual pages that are on there, or even look in the live SERPs, you'll see that the page is in fact ranking for keywords. And yet Search Console is still holding on to this old error and not cleaning up the error reporting. And so this is even, a little bit different than yours, where you have different errors. This is just, I made an error once and Google won't let it go. It takes, sometimes 2-3 weeks before they'll let that clean up and say, oh yeah, it's all fine.
So this deck that I put together actually had 2 parts to it. And that was actually the second part. So I have
Ooh.
another full deck talking about
Excellent.
just that kind of thing where, hey, we had a problem, Search Console reports a problem, but we can't find it. I won't say too much about it. I'll save the,
Yeah, we'll
no
cover it.
no spoilers for next session, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I've seen that exact same thing. And like I said, that was part of this deck. And so I figured, let's break it into different things.
Yeah. But when you're saying, the data is not live data, that is absolutely correct, because, some elements of it, Search Console will disagree with itself.
Yeah. I think the big takeaway for me, at least, is not point number one. It's data. It's not information. And that sounds like parsing words a little bit, but it's data. There's nothing wrong with the data. It's just that it can, like you both have talked about, it can lead you down the wrong path if you take it at face value. It can tell you things, you can derive things from it that you shouldn't. You just look at it and say, okay, what's Google saying? Google's saying this is a problem. Let's look at the page. Let's analyze it. Let's see what's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even in your previous example, you're going up and saying, let's go do a live URL inspect, and it's giving you the correct error at that particular point, which is different, which is good for people to know.
And to your point, that's because it's two different systems. And as tied in with our bot watch, if you check a URL with Search Console and then go check your logs after that, you will see a different bot. There is a different bot that's specific for Search Console. So you can see anytime you hit Search Console, or if somebody else is trying to view your website using Google Tools, you can see that as well in your log files.
Very cool.
I will hand the share back over to you, Ted, unless somebody has a question about this deck.
All right.
There you go. Back to you, sir.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Charles. Always a good discussion. So yeah, we have a few questions here. They look like they're in general. And be sure to get your questions in now. Otherwise, we may have a short show. So it's up to you, the audience, to ask good, exciting questions, and we'll give you our best answers. But all right. There's one here that I think is good. I'm doing them out of order. Let me switch to live chat so I see all messages. What has been the biggest changes in technical SEO in the last 1 to 2 years? Well, first, I want to define technical SEO, because if you ask most SEOs in the world, are you a technical SEO? They all say yes. And technically, they're an SEO, so why not? SEO is somewhat technical work, so we must be technical. I kind of disagree with that general description. I think, in my opinion, technical SEO means you're really getting into the highly technical stuff. So you're looking at server configuration, network configuration, DNS, you're debugging web applications. If you're figuring out that one of your advertisers has a size limit overflow on a cookie that shows up when their ad displays and crashes the web app, you're a technical SEO. Because now many people can do that. It's highly technical stuff. So when we're looking at that, that's what I'm thinking in terms of technical SEO. So what has changed in that definition over the past 1 to 2 years? I would say that the amount of render time that Google is using before capturing the HTML. So Googlebot visits a page, they let JavaScript run for a while, then they capture the HTML and they use that for all of their processing. Now, that time is important because JavaScript can change the content as a function of time. So you could let the clock run infinitely, and JavaScript every 7 seconds could change the content on the page forever. So Google has to pull the plug and say, enough's enough. At this point in time, we're capturing what the page content is. So in the past, GoogleBot would give 20 seconds after document ready. 20. So to get a rendered page the way Googlebot saw it, you would have to let the page render to 20 seconds, then grab the HTML. And that's what Googlebot saw. I think Google was cutting costs and they reduced that down to 4 seconds. So what's the technical implication of that? Anybody that's built on JavaScript frameworks has until 4 seconds after document ready to draw their content to the page. Any content drawn after that 4 seconds is invisible to Google. And so the technical SEOs need to be able to recognize the architecture of the website and go, oh, time is a factor here, and be able to say, from the waterfall diagram, do we have a potential problem? If yes, then you need to go into the CMS of the zones that take the longest to draw, and you start putting in test keywords to see if they become findable in search. Now you're diagnosing what parts of the page are invisible to Google as a function of time. And so now you have to speed up JavaScript framework and web service architecture. And that is highly technical. So that's probably the biggest change in the past 2 years, was that change from 20 seconds where you could do anything you want in JavaScript frameworks and it would get indexed and you'd be okay, to 4 seconds where most sites are now struggling to get all their content indexed. So that's a big change. Lee, what do you feel about this debate?
I think it's great that you start off with a definition of technical SEO, because what I see, I understand that realm of technical SEO exists, and I know that that's not my strength at all. That's not the area that I live in. I don't want to go there. I'd hire somebody to fix, to find and fix that sort of stuff. What I think a lot of SEOs think is technical SEO is if you run a site audit using whatever tool or process or processes you want. And what I've seen in that realm that has changed over the last couple of years, if you go back 2 years ago, everybody was worried about core web vitals. Everybody was trying to optimize for speed of different elements of the page, and I see that less now. I think that everything that's been done has been done, or people realize that that's not really a primary driver of ranking, so it's somewhat played out. So you see those questions a whole lot less. Other than that, not a lot. I mean, it's basically the questions and things that I see people doing are the same they've been 5-10 years ago.
What do you think, Charles?
The only thing that gets me a little bit is I've run across folks who, we all have our specialties, we all have our strengths, that's for sure. But there's sometimes folks, they start ignoring other parts of SEO, like as if it doesn't matter. Like, oh, I just do links. I don't do any on-page optimization. I just worry about links. And it's like, well, wait a minute. No, you should understand on-page optimization. You should understand technical. Like, you may not get deep into DNS and server settings, but you should have a base understanding. There's a certain level of understanding that I would expect an SEO to have. And you may, again, your personal strengths, your professional strengths will usually weigh to one. Someone may be really good at content writing. Some folks may be great at schema or something like that. Like, everyone has their little thing they specialize in. But if you want to be a successful SEO, you're going to wear many hats. So that's my thought.
Very true. Let's see. Is there an actual difference between valid entity schema and broken one with the same terms stuffed into another zone, details div. Has this been tested? There's not a lot of testing. So the testing that's out there on things like this tends to be one-offs without a lot of peer repetition. What I tend to see in my own anecdotal experiences and my own like one-off testing is that it appears that Google likes agreement between sources. So if your title agrees with your H1, agrees with your URL, Google feels better about it than if those three things disagree as to what the page is about. Similarly, we see in the Google Maps side of things that Google likes agreement. So you claim something in your profile, your website should talk about that claim. So for example, if you claim karaoke, you activate that switch. Your website should talk about your karaoke night. Your schema should detail the karaoke event, time and place. And it's great if reviews mention what a great karaoke night it is, and Google will even present third-party mentions like in articles about the 20 best karaoke bars in Seattle. So agreement is kind of the name of the game there. And I believe that probably extends to normal web search too, because that multiple forms, multiple dimensions of agreement on the facts is the only thing Google really has to build confidence. What do you think, Lee?
It's an interesting question, and I'm going to echo that a little bit. There hasn't been testing because what I took from that question is basically is broken schema like a hidden div. Does it work the same way? These sort of compare and contrast. Does this work better than that? All fabulous questions. But one of the challenges is that schema is not schema. And what I mean by that is if you look at Yoast schema, it's very small. It's almost useless. And when I write schema, I might spend an hour writing schema. And so my schema kicks the crap out of Yoast. But if Terry Samuels looked at my schema, he goes, "That's cute what you did there," because he'll spend 4 or 5 days doing the research to write out a schema, that makes, he writes an encyclopedia and I write a pamphlet. That's kind of the, if you're looking at it there. So how do you compare schema when, schema, can be just like a web page. It can be varying size, varying complexity, even if done properly. So it makes just testing some of these notions challenging. And there hasn't been a lot of testing of A versus B, or does this work better than that, or how much better does this work better than that. It's kind of like the questions that we used to see a lot probably 5 years ago. Does a keyword in an H4, can 3 keyword mentions in H5s beat a keyword mention in H4? When we're starting to compare and contrast zones and power and things like that, it becomes an infinite number of tests and very complex to execute.
Yeah, I did 2 tests. I did one where I used keyword and title and FAQ schema and got that one ranking really quickly, amazingly quickly. Then I tried repeating the test where it was title tag and I did, mentions and about, and I used the entity links to the Wikipedia pages. And that test like just flat out died. It didn't work the same. And so just know that there may be a case where you need to have the right qualifying components to get certain schemas to work. Some might work, some might not right out of the box. And as Lee mentioned, I haven't seen a lot of testing about, just discrete objects of schema, tested in isolation. what we have seen are these tests where people can rank a blank page with very verbose and full schema. So Terry Samuels kind of discovered that, and then Clint Butler repeated it and pushed the envelope on it. And then I repeated it after Clint did. And that's, the testing community doing proper peer review. We take your findings and what you did, and we conduct the experiment ourselves. And so what I'm finding is I can confirm Terry and Clint's work. They're spot on. But when I pushed the envelope with mine, I just went down to one schema object. I didn't do the big verbose thing. And so I found that one object type worked and one object type didn't. And that's how far the research has got.
Yeah, I'll also tying it back to something that Charles showed earlier, which is a lot of times if you're testing in a time and you're not familiar with what's going on with Google, you'll put your stuff out there and then it'll start to percolate, and then Google has a rollback, and you'll look at your results in a couple of weeks and say, screw it, it didn't work. And you just got caught in a time where it hadn't had enough time to actually be fully processed and evaluated within the system. And a lot of times that'll happen during an update as well.
Yeah, and we don't know if there are multiple systems that go into schema and take the part they need. Like, I'm sure that the Google Maps stack will go in and get the geo-relevant bits of schema out for itself and ignore the rest, while the keyword density part just goes in and grabs that FAQ schema. Is good to go right away. With the test that worked for me, I was shocked at how fast it worked. Like, it was non-existent page, never before attempted keyword. 10 hours later, I'm ranking in top positions and competing with some of the biggest educational brands there are. Like, that is fast. And what that means is that Terry Samuels' discovery that you can rank a blank page with schema, it definitively proves that schema is part of the Google algorithm ecosystem. So if you've been neglecting schema, you might want to reconsider that stance. All right. Let's see. Has anyone developed a GPT yet that can analyze log files quickly and easily? That is a great idea. I would love to be able to ask a question of a log file. That would be frickin' amazing. I would like to say, are there any GoogleBot entries in this log file after Tuesday that appear to be interfacing with the cart or the faceted navigation? And if it could go through and figure that all out, or if I could say, where does it appear that Googlebot is getting into an infinite loop, and it could figure that out, that would be amazing. And that stuff, I know how to do it by hand. I can write a series of Unix commands to process the log to tell me that. But that takes a Unix nerd. And most SEOs are not, by my definition, technical SEOs, so they don't know all the Unix nerd stuff. That's part of the technical SEO, is all the Unix nerd stuff.
Yeah, I would love just to be able to ask the question, not to come up with the filters. The filters that I'm constantly going through to try to figure out, okay, what is this doing? What is that doing? Just say, is there a new Googlebot? What kind of files is it processing? That would save me 15, 20 minutes. So go quickly.
What's interesting is I know that because I've been playing a lot with Claude, and with Claude you can upload a file up to 10 megabytes, and it'd be interesting just to try that, just upload a log file like that and ask it questions. Say, this is a a log from a particular website and ask questions and see how accurate it is.
So I think that's a great idea. I bet you if you built such a tool, somebody out there would want to buy it.
I would. You'd have one customer at least.
So, that's where it all starts, right? Um, let's see. Terry Power says, nice job, Charles. I agree. Tony says, I'm looking at my crawled pages report on Search Console. Should I be worried about fraud no index if it's not pages I've submitted, just the search queries getting crawled? Have you guys ever seen a fraud no index?
I think he means found no index. I think it was just a typo.
Found, okay. All right,
Because I've seen found no index.
Mm-hmm.
all right, so found no index. Um,
Yeah, that's a one of those errors that can mean a lot of different things in and of itself. It's not it's a spot to dig. It's not, oh, here's the answer. This is what you have to do. Just go resubmit or to go do this. I mean,
well,
you have
I think
Step
that
one, go to the page. Like, what is the page? Is it a page that should exist? Is it like a cart page? I've had that just recently. I was looking at a log file for someone, and Google sends their little love letters every so often, and it said this page there was no content on the page. I went to it. It's a cart page with a no index. So Google, what do you even tell me errors for? We tell you to go away, Google. But yeah, the first thing I always do is go to the page. What is the page, and is it a page you care about? If it is, then that's one thing. If it's a page you don't care about, then it's another issue. Like, why is Google crawling and reporting on a page I don't even care about to be in the search engine to begin with?
yeah, and a lot of these designations, they're paired, like there's two columns of data. And so the other column, you have the found not index part, but the other part might say Google Systems. And when it's Google Systems found not indexed, that means Google had you in the queue and then they had a problem. So they just cleared the queue and you need to request indexing on that page to get it processed. So those could be just something that was unfortunate timing because of Google circumstance. But they could also be something like, yeah, you have a no index tag on your page and you need to go get it fixed. So I think you have to combine both columns of descriptor, not just use one column or the other. You got to put them together. And that's probably a better clue.
I also go back to something that Charles was saying. It's, do you want the page there or not? Because a lot of times you'll find that if you look at two places that I always look, the XML sitemap for your, is that URL there? If it's there and it shouldn't be, go fix that. And then the other one is, do you, sometimes we will inadvertently link to a page that we intend to build or that's a placeholder and Google finds it because, maybe even you just putting the placeholder up and your WordPress theme automatically creates these links underneath the page. Google crawls it, finds it, and goes, hey, we had a problem here. So, you can look at that usually through, Screaming Frog or, whatever tool you want to spider the site and see if you can discover how Google found that URL that you didn't want them to find.
Let's see. I've seen lots of nasty crawl loops from my Shopify site, and that's hard to diagnose on a Shopify site because historically they don't give you the web logs. And so you have to use very cleverly engineered third-party logging systems in order to get that kind of data. If you're just relying on Search Console, just know that Search Console only gives you a tiny snippet and it's only meant to be used diagnostically. You shouldn't use it like it's Google Analytics. It's not reliable in that way. Let's see. What's the best way to get started with Schema? I know that Terry Samuels uh, he has Solterra is his company, and he occasionally has training. And he is far more verbose and technical in Schema than just about anyone else I know of. So I would probably send you his direction, ask him when his next training is. Terry asks, is poor schema better than none, or can it harm a page? Yeah, if you have error-prone schema or your schema is off target, yeah, you can do harm with it. So you need to definitely make sure you know what you're doing. I believe Charles has seen some real doozies over on the enterprise side here. You want to
Validate your code before you push it live, folks. You can do that. You've got the validator, the schema validator. You can copy and paste code in there. You don't have to give it access to your staging or dev sites. Copy and paste, see what it does. This is going back to the question actually from earlier where, is it okay to have broken schema? I would just say Search Console Reports has a report about broken schema and will tell you if your schema is broken. I have a trouble believing that they will report to you that your schema is broken if they don't care that it's broken. My guess is that they care that it's broken. At the very least, it's stopping them from doing something or slowing them down, probably costing them money, which they don't like. Don't cost Google money. They don't like that.
Derek Booth is asking, does Googlebot actually follow the rules set in the robots.txt file? If you were trying to block a given page, I thought Google read the URLs anyway and then decided what it felt was right. Google does a best effort to honor the robots.txt, but the web is a Wild West place with a lot of chaos and stuff. So, for example, you can say, Google, never let Googlebot visit my shopping cart, even though I have shopping cart links that Google could discover and crawl. I'm denying that in my robots.txt. The problem is those links can be in many forms. There could be URL shorteners and redirects and all kinds of things that Google could discover elsewhere that would be allowed by the robots.txt. And it's not until Googlebot actually gets to the final destination of the page that they know a violation has even occurred. So Googlebot will visit the page anyway in those circumstances, even though the robots.txt said otherwise. So you have to remember that it's a best efforts thing. It's not 100%. If you want to keep Google out of your faceted navigation, if you want to keep Google out of your shopping cart, if you want to keep Google from adding products to cart, you need to code them in a way that Googlebot won't explore them. And even better yet, if you have a custom store or something like that, you should just not even draw those things on the page for Googlebot. You take away the choice. When it's only enforced by robots.txt, Google has a choice. Should I follow it? Should I not? But if you are detecting Googlebot and saying no faceted navigation for you, then Googlebot is not going to explore the faceted navigation. And that, in my opinion, that's the best answer because it just eliminates the possibility.
So
what are your thoughts, Charles?
I was just going to say, yeah, I want to jump in. So I've actually spent a lot of time trying to keep Google out of things. So you'd be amazed how much time I spend keeping Google out of certain parts of the page. If you don't mind if I share my screen for just a couple quick seconds,
Yeah,
Ted, I
go
want to
for it.
share with everybody and show them something. So this is Google. This is Google's Search Central. And look what it says for robust.txt. Don't use robust.txt as a means to hide your web pages. So this is basically consolidating everything that Ted said. If other pages point to your page with descriptive text, Google could still index the URL. Robust.txt is a bad way to keep things out of Google if people are linking to you. Honestly, I've even seen no index tags not work. If there's enough links, if there's enough things, especially internal links, going to a no index page, Google will still index it. And Google will tell you, Google tattles on itself in Search Console as well. It'll say, indexed but blocked by robots.txt, indexed but blocked by no, it'll tell you. And then you have to go to those pages and figure out, well, why is it being indexed? Is it something we're doing? Is it something somebody else is doing? Maybe we did something wrong.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's see, where were we? You have previously said that there can be a traffic loss if Google's rendered indexing is down. Yeah, if you're relying on like JavaScript to draw content, then absolutely. Does this only apply to new pages or also old pages? It typically hits old pages. So, for example, last year, had somebody reach out to me, an SEO reached out to me in a panic because his employer was about to fire him. The engineers were blaming the SEO because their rankings all tanked site wide at the same time. They're like, case of bad SEO. And it was a mobile device online retailer, and all their product pages, all their categories vanished. But it was all built on JavaScript frameworks, and Google disabled rendering during a massive update. And somebody at the site triggered a change. They published a new feed, they requested crawling, and Googlebot complied, went and crawled, but didn't render. And when you don't execute the JavaScript, no content, no products, no categories, they're all blank pages. And all their rankings fell instantly. Now, when Google turns the rendering back on, and that's usually a week or two later, then it all comes back. But it wasn't the SEO's fault that the business and the engineers architected that stack in that manner. It was absolutely not the SEO's fault. And we were able to definitively prove it to the business. It's one of those cases where, oh shit, we got to run a test and save a job here. And so we put test keywords on the page that were in the raw source, and we put test keywords that were in the JavaScript content. We requested indexing, and the next day we were demonstrating that the raw source was getting indexed, but the JavaScript wasn't. So you can prove this out when it happens. So don't get fired when it's an engineering choice and it wasn't the SEO's fault. All right. Any thoughts on that? Have you ever feared getting fired for those situations, Charles?
Never. My employers support me 100%. And
Ah.
I them.
Yeah, not all employers are so gracious.
Yeah, no, there's always that concern that, you've got a lot of people riding on you, whether it's a small or a large company, the SEO could be the lifeblood of the organization. I would challenge an organization that relies so much on SEO to say, maybe you shouldn't rely so much on SEO because it is somebody else that's controlling you, but it's a constant, it's out there. It's always sitting out there.
Yeah, if you think you're being impacted by Google's handling of rendered content, put a test keyword in your JavaScript delivered content. That's the easiest way to test it. Put a brand new keyword, JL396RQR5, and put one that's not in the rendered part in the actual static code of the page. And, if one's findable and the other's not, you kind of got your answer. All right. So you mentioned redirecting spam links last episode. Could you give me an idea of how to do it without redirecting the page on the website? Well, I don't know that you can do it without redirecting the page. Well, you can do it. So here's how I would do it. So I would do it. This is technical SEO again, so I'm going to get technical on you. If this is beyond your ability, then you need to find technical help. So the way I handle it is I do a redirect from the HT access, and I put in parameters for that redirect so that it is filtered based off of the referring URL. So this is for the case of the -k.html web spam. And so whenever the refer, not the page it's going to, is from a -k.html, then I send that off to a $2 domain I control elsewhere. All right. And the reason I use a $2 domain is because if I send it to Lee's website, then he has a basis for damages and consuming. So I don't want you getting sued. So send it to a garbage domain you own, and then you won't sue yourself, hopefully.
Well,
And
Ted,
then,
I was going to say, let me take this a little tactical. I just sent 1,000 Viagra links to the SEO Tool Lab, Quora page. Do you have to identify each of those 1,000 and write, assuming I didn't, pattern it, and
yeah,
they're all,
this
yeah,
only works when there's an observable pattern. And so the context I was speaking to was the
right.
-k.html link spam that lots of websites have massive amounts of. And so that particular portion of the spam, you can redirect by having the redirect trigger based off the referring URL. And then you would send it out. And what actually technically happens then is when Googlebot finds the spam page out on the web with the -k.html link to your website, it's going to then visit to your server, get a redirect hop to your garbage domain. And so your money site ends up being a middle hop with a destination of your garbage domain. So instead of Googlebot seeing a 404 on your money site, it just sees a link to a garbage domain. We don't care if it ranks or doesn't rank. So in that case, the philosophy is that it's better to be a middle hop than to be a destination of targeted spam attacks. And you have to do a redirect to handle that. I don't know of a way to handle it without a redirect.
So I got that, but do you have a way of handling it if I did send, 1,000 Viagra links to a particular page?
If it's from the same website, we could trigger based off of the domain name. If it's involving a keyword, we could trigger off the keyword. Like a lot of people will do this when they get foreign language spam. They'll redirect the Japanese backlinks. We don't have Japanese customers. We don't do business in Japan. We shouldn't be 90% Japanese backlinks. So you trigger off of the characters then in the URLs, and then you redirect it to a different, more appropriate place.
So
And
if
so,
if URL contains Viagra,
yeah,
redirect. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so those are kind of the methodologies. You can do it based off of server IPs. You can there's a number of different ways, but it's on the technical side of SEO. So you need somebody that understands how to do htaccess redirects and has a good grasp of the problem and what needs to be handled. Um, let's see. Have you noticed a new Google bot is related to the Google Helpful Content Update? Have you tracked that?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes. So the 122 is what showed up with the helpful content update. And again, what I found interesting, all during that month, and everybody's waiting for it to be done, the minor patch, that last number, the fourth number, never changed all month long. It wasn't until the end of April when it started changing. So that means they were coding. They were coding or doing something in the back end. They were not changing their the Google bot during that whole month process.
You just blew my mind. If you can put a version number to a specific update, you can potentially diagnose being hit by that version number right before the traffic tanking.
Yep.
That might be a way to determine if you're hit or not, which means there could be a diagnostic log tool that can tell you, that could take your web logs and see the traffic and can see those numbers and can tell you if you are likely hit by something or not. And
Yes.
that's the tool right there. Were you hit by helpful content update?
Yeah,
That's what we
the
analyze.
struggle that we have with that is, although we can see that, Google has a new Google bot, we don't see what the Google bot is consuming. We can see the page, but we don't know what it's pulling off the page or what it's doing with it. So knowing that I've been hit by the helpful content update and I can see that from the log file potentially, I still don't know what to fix on my page. I just know that I've been hit.
Yeah, but even still, like if we had a map of updates to GoogleBot version data,
Mhm.
I mean, and then you look at traffic and you look at the GoogleBot from the historic logs. I mean, diagnostically, that's amazing. That's a product that should exist.
I can see. I'm thinking about how much I want to say on an open telephone call here. Um, I have a pretty good sense of when Google is doing things for specific channels, say news, search, image search, based upon the movement I see in our traffic
Mhm.
and the actual bots that change. I see things jump up, then pull back, and then go back up. And I've seen that just recently with the logs. Now, the problem I have, like you're saying, Lee, is I don't know what they changed. All I can see, but I
Yeah.
do have multiple sites now as well. And so I can say, well, this site moved and that site moved, but site C didn't move at all. What's different between these? Is one of them doing something that the others are not doing?
Yeah.
Are they doing something that Google likes? Are we doing something Google doesn't like that the other site is not doing? That's a lot harder to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the two questions is, have I been hit by X update, which, this is a great idea for, diagnostically saying, yeah, it looks like you've been hit by this. Then everybody's like, now what do I do? And that this particular thing doesn't answer that
Yeah.
particular question. Although with sites of the size and scale of yours, you can pick up clues because you can see differences, like, hey, images are more important on 8 of my 9 sites,
Yeah.
and then you can go and dig.
The problem is so if I say, oh, look at this, videos are now suddenly bringing on more traffic than they were bringing. It's gone up 10, 12%. The problem is it because are we doing something on our video? Did they dial up a metric like authority? And now just because we're authority site, we're going to get more. So there's nothing we could do to fix it. Did they make a change and say, oh, I want to make sure that if we start going down, is it because they want to start giving more love to smaller sites, maybe? There's nothing I could do to fix that. So that's another problem is that sometimes it's not just what we're doing or not doing, but Google just made a change and there's nothing we could do to change that. They could say, we want to give more love to YouTube, so therefore less to everybody else. I can't become YouTube. There's nothing I can do to make myself YouTube.
Let's see. Have you noticed? Oh, no, wait, sorry, wrong one. Are core web vitals even a slight ranking factor? Well, here's what I can tell you for sure. So I've made a test group among my canary in the coal mine tests for slow renders. So I'm looking at pages that take more than 30 seconds to draw to screen, some taking even a minute. All right, so these are egregiously slow pages that rank. All right. And so I've been watching them for months now, and they're all still alive and well. So I can tell you that at some point, it doesn't seem to matter. Because if you have a 1 minute page load time and you're still ranking in page one of Google, I mean, how strict of a rule is it? So I think if it is something, it's like you suggest in the question, it's slight, it's sprinkles. No, historically, we've tried to quantify its presence in the results, and we've tried to test it in single variable testing. That research was done by Lee and Clint and SIA and other people and myself, and it was all unanimous. It wasn't a ranking factor. However, there is more recent research that suggests that it is a thing now, so a recent change. I have not seen that recent research. I have only heard about it from other people that it exists. So that's my knowledge on it. What have you heard, Lee?
I still see it around, but I hear more frustrations because a lot of people spend a lot of time and money optimizing their core web vitals, and their rankings didn't change at all. And so there's this a bitter taste sort of out there a little bit. Now, as we all know, what we knew could have changed overnight or a month ago or whatever. So you always have to retest. But I haven't seen and I've looked a little because I've had a couple of occasions to look. I still haven't seen anything in the SERPs in the data that says site speed or some of the other pieces are a ranking factor, at least not directly. So
yeah, and my understanding of page speed is that it's historically has been more of a filter than a factor. So if you have a heavy page weight and a slow page load time, you don't appear in 4G mobile searches. So that's kind of where the behaviors perform. So if you've ever noticed like checking rankings from a ferry boat where you're hotspotting through a cell phone, you oftentimes will feel great on the ferry boat, and then you go back to being bummed when you get on the corporate broadband. So that's page speed acting like a filter instead of a factor. And so that's the main thing to consider. You want a fast website because when your company sends out promotional emails, the recipients might be on a 4G connection standing at the bus stop. They want the promotional web page to open up on their mobile device so that they can buy your product or service. That's what a fast website is for. If you're going to do core web vitals tuning, you tell them it's to improve conversions. You don't promise rankings. You promise the thing you can deliver, better conversions. Those 1 minute load time pages, they do not convert. So promise the right thing. Don't promise rankings for everything you recommend. If you promise better customer satisfaction and more conversions, I like Core Web Vitals and page speed testing. If you're promising rankings out of Google, I think that's dangerous. I think when they measure the KPI and it doesn't materialize, you could lose your job. So be careful. Let's see. I don't think this question has ever been asked, but are you, Lee, or anyone here taking clients? I don't take clients anymore. I don't have enough support staff to be able to do a good job with clients. I'm a very small company and I focus mostly on the technology. So I often make references for people to SEOs I trust. I know that Lee does take clients. I don't know if Charles takes clients. So I'll let you guys speak.
Everyone who comes to me, I refer them to Lee, and he pays me a healthy
royalty
on that. Yeah. So if you have any question, just come straight to me first. No, I don't honestly really take much in the way of clients.
Yeah, I will look at certain situations. As a general rule, no, I don't take clients. Occasionally, I will look at a consulting or potentially some sort of relationship there. And every once in a while, my wife, Honey, will take a client, usually through a referral from a friend that says, "Hey, this is an interesting situation that you might want to take a look at." And if she's got the bandwidth or I've got the bandwidth and I think I can help and I think it's, worthwhile, then, potentially. But generally speaking, like if you're a local roofer and you want an SEO, I will refer you to somebody. I will not, take the standard client on.
Yeah, and for a long time, I reduced what I'd offer down to emergency SEO, and I recently doubled my prices on it because I want to do less of it. Um, and so it's my way of saying no with pricing. So it would take a pretty serious disaster and some earnest money in order to pull me in. But that said, if you only need 10 minutes of my time to get a referral or a what should I do, I'm always happy to answer those types of things via Skype. Just send me a Skype message. Um, as long as it doesn't take more than 10 minutes to answer, I'll help people out. But just keep it short. And I'm always happy to make a referral. So I've referred people to Lee and Honey. I've referred people to Clint. I've referred people for schema training to Terry. So
Mhm.
yeah, all about getting you the right information. But you know all the personalities, so or at least hopefully you do if you've been watching the channel for a while. You can also reach out direct.
I was going to reiterate the same thing, actually. If somebody reached out to me, a lot of times folks reach out to me via LinkedIn. If it's a 5-10 minute answer, I'm usually happy to answer it. If you want to try to turn that into a free consulting, I will shut it down. But I've had people reach out to me with kind of emerge like Google doesn't see my site, and I'll take a look at it in 5 minutes. I can tell, oh yeah, because it's all JavaScript rendered client side. You're going to have a problem with that. And
Yeah, exactly. I have a WordPress site, and there are a ton of Dash 1000s in Search Console. I'd 404 them. Is that the best option to deal with them? There's some debate about whether this is a Google artifact versus a web spam like the -k.html. And I know Google says you can just ignore 404s. And on small websites, I think that's kind of largely true, but on very large websites, I've seen detrimental impact. And so if your website is on the larger side, I would see a problem, fix a problem. I'd handle it with the same -k.html solution. I'd redirect it to a $2 domain I control and just be happy being the middle hop and not the destination. Um, I'm not sure why it is that larger sites seem to be impacted by these 404 problems. The 404s might be a symptom and not the actual issue. But something weird is going on such that these types of attacks are becoming more commonplace and are growing in scale. So I suspect they're working. So yeah, I would address it. Better safe than sorry. It's not friendly, whatever it is, so it gets fixed. Let's see. Daniel says Core Web Vitals does not matter. We work on media sites with millions of organic users, and Core Web Vitals tucked on most of them. Oh, sucked. Typo. Yeah, it clearly isn't a requirement to rank on page one. So, like I mentioned, I have a cohort of test websites ranking on page one with 30-second to 60-second draw times, and they rank just fine. They're alive and well.
And every time you say that 30 to 60 second, I just mentally go, oh God, and close the browser tab. I'm like, I'm reaching mentally to close down those things that have that kind of load time.
Yeah. That's why when I find them, I'm like, oh, okay, we'll put that one into the database. So I have a database of things that just should not rank, and I watch them over time. That's my canaries in the coal mine testing. Speaking of which, later, Terry, I want to add your nothing but schema to my canary database of things to rank track daily. So yeah, if you're open to it, just Skype me the link. I won't share it, but I'll just track it and report on the rankings. Um, let's see. All right. Anybody else want to talk on Core Web Vitals, or should we move on? All right. What would it take for me to be the best SEO in the industry in 6 months? I think it takes about 2 years because you actually need some experience under your belt doing these things. But I think if you followed what Lee teaches, if you followed what Terry teaches, if you followed what Clint teaches, if you followed some of the stuff I teach, not all of it, uh, you would be doing very well very quickly. So the thing is like, if you use my methodology, you ought to see ranking improvements within like 2 days. Like I often tell people you should prove that Cora works within your first week. It does not take months to prove Cora works. Either you have what it takes and you can demonstrate results in like 48 hours, or you have some learning to do so you can get to that point. Um, and and so that's just having that primer. Sometimes you could take training. There are courses people have, and there are tools that people recommend, but it's the training that goes with those things, and then it's the practice. So if you got Cora for a month, you'd get the free training, that primer on getting results quickly. Lee's training course, he teaches you all of the research and the rationale and makes you do the homework to do the learning. And that's an 8-week process. So Lee is making experts in as few as 8 weeks.
Yeah, but they all have a foundation from before. I think if you're starting off and you want you've got some degree of foundation, what I'm going to say is practice. And there's two ways that I found that work really, really well. One, part of the way that I learned to get good at SEO was testing. I would just hear these ideas, hear a guru or some personality or a Google pronouncement say X is true, and I'd go, all right, let me go figure out if it is or it isn't. The other thing is, and we've talked about this a lot on Fight Club, put up some websites, some test websites, spend $10, get a .com, throw up a WordPress site about whatever you want on there, and try different things to get those pages ranking. Utilize it, as a living laboratory to see, does Core Web Vitals matter? Make a page that takes 30 seconds to load and see if you can get it to rank. Those kind of things are very, very valuable because you start to think very differently about SEO and what drives it and what doesn't drive, what's true and what isn't true. And as soon as you keep practicing, I mean, Ted, you mentioned it, you have to have some experience under your belt. Yeah, you're going to see the more pages that you have to interact with, the more situations you're going to see and the more patterns you're going to see. Hey, you know what? If I put my keyword in the, certain zones, I can get some pretty nice movements in 24, 48 hours. I can move from, potentially page 5 to page 2 or even page 1, with some of those things. And then it's like, what are the next things that I can do? So it is an intentional, deliberate, practice, however you go, whatever process you go through.
Yeah, and I think a great example is your wife, Honey. She started off as a beginner, and round about the 1 year mark, she was frustrating, big name SEOs and ranking contests. She made those big name SEOs pull out their wallets and spend big money on PR to retake control. And so, yeah, if she's that good at it within a year, uh, it's totally achievable. Anybody should be able to do it with the right information and the right mentality.
And she started off as a tester. I mean, that, she didn't understand, even HTML. So let's go learn some basic HTML. Let's set up some tests. Let's, and follow the questions that she had naturally, to start off with. And, she was curious about images, which is why she's become really, really good at image SEO. It just followed from there. So, just, you're going to have to, and you can also do this just as a training program, get Quora and just use it to rank lots and lots and lots of pages, but use different styles. Don't just always follow the roadmap, try different things on there, follow the roadmap a lot of times, and then just follow a portion of the roadmap, or follow an idea that you have that it's all about the H6, and see if you can get a page to rank with no H1s through 5, just H6s, and see, what you can do. So,
And I'll give you the secret life hack. If you can't afford Quora, but you just want the knowledge, I have videos on my website that talk about most of the concepts. So you take what you can use and you leave what you can't from the training videos.
Mhm.
And you'll find with a lot of software tools that their training videos will teach you things that are about SEO and not necessarily only about the software. Let's see. I think a lot of SEOs forget to understand that what a lot of SEOs forget to understand is that practices that have existed for the last 2 decades come full circle all too often. I know what's old is new again has definitely happened, but I think there's this other thing that our industry never acknowledges or talks about, and that is nothing ever change. Nothing ever changes. And when Google comes out with all these updates, everybody thinks it's a radical reinvention of search, and it's usually not. It's usually some fringe thing that probably won't hit you. Um, and we find all these people in the SEO groups laughing at you when you say something that's old school. They say, "What is it, 2004 again?" Well, what if they never fixed the glitch?
Mhm.
What if the thing that worked in 2004 has worked continuously since 2004 and still works today? Is
Mhm.
it 2004 again?
Yeah, I mean, how many times? I mean, annually, probably 20 years now. So we take it back to 2004. Annually, backlinks are dead. There's always that, pronouncement. The links are dead. It's a whole new ball game, and links, have been a part of rankings all that particular time. But I think as an industry, it's not just that. It's somebody comes out with something new. So if tomorrow somebody put out, a training or a course or something like that on it's color wheel theory for ranking, and we all know that purple websites rank better than green websites, rank better than blue websites, and blah blah blah. Everybody be about color theory, and forgetting about backlinks, forgetting about on page, because it's just about the color. And that tends to be the way our industry runs. We chase the shiny object hard and forget about the fundamental stuff that never has gone away. So,
Daniel asks, do you know of any top factors for Google Discover? I would suggest asking that earlier next week when Charles is here, because he would be the guy to ask.
yeah.
And last question for today, what to look for in a technical SEO course? I've never seen one.
Mm.
The things that you would want to learn if you wanted to really get into technical SEO is you want to learn how to do web server configuration and administration. You'd want to understand, the basics of network administration. you would want to understand, at least at a fundamental level, how the technologies and web development work with databases and cookies and protocols. You would want to understand the standards. You'd want to know when things are violating, like the HTTP standard, when things are violating the HTML specification. Cookies have standards. Can a cookie be too big? Yes, it can. Are your client's cookies too big? I don't even know how to check it. Well, I know how to check it, but you might not know how to check it. There's all these types of technical things, but they come from multiple disciplines. So server configuration, web development, database administration. Those are where those technical aspects come into play. So you would have to learn about full stack web development and how it connects with SEO. And so if you're an SEO and a full stack developer, all right, now you might be on a path for being a technical SEO. All right, any thoughts on that, Lee?
Yeah, my answer to that is a whole lot easier. Go to conferences, make friends with a lot of really smart people, and develop a Rolodex of people that are really good at various disciplines, including technical SEO. So when you come up with a problem that's outside of your area of expertise, you have somebody that you can reach out to and get the help, because you cannot be an expert in all facets of SEO. There's way too many disciplines, and a lot of them change, fairly quickly. So can't do it all. So make friends.
Yep, I once went through the exercise of making the most authoritative SEO checklist. I quit when it hit 10,000 bullet points, and I wasn't even close to done. So
Yeah.
there's no way one person can know it all. All right, with that, we'll see you next week.